So, Nicole, thank you very much for agreeing to chat to me this morning.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So, you are the managing director of the UK branch of bookshop.org. Do you want to tell us what bookshop.org is?
Yeah. So bookshop.org was founded with a mission to support independent bookstores. And what we do is we provide a platform where bookshops can come set up a profile on our website in about the same amount of time takes to set up a Twitter or Instagram profile. And then anytime a bookshop sells a book through our website, they get a 30% commission on the cover price of that book. And when that order is placed, we do all the work. So that order gets placed via our website. We send that order to our wholesale partner, Gardner's Books, and then they ship it directly to the customer. So it's a very low effort way for bookshops to get online sales.
Okay, so you're not specifically connecting the bookstore themselves with the details from the person buying the book and like just like connecting the two. You're actually physically like you've got the books in warehouse and you're letting them as a bookstore be the like person marketing or selling said book without actually being the person distributing it. So it's not actually, yeah, they don't have to have like a mailing thing set up or anything. That makes it quite easy actually. I didn't realize it was set up that way. I just imagined it was like a page where you'd go on and you would just like be ordering through your page to other independent sellers.
Yeah, it's interesting because some customers have been confused about that. They think that they're getting a book off the shelf of the indie bookshop down the road from them. But no, it's not the case. It comes from, like I said, Gardner's, our wholesale partner, and the benefit of that, I think there are many, but two big ones. One is that a lot of bookshops they only have so much space, so they can't stock lots and lots of books. And so, for example, we've seen a lot of children's bookshops say, "Oh, now I can actually sell books also to the parents for their own reading, even though I don't tend to stock those books in my shop." And the other thing, as you say, is just that it's an enormous time saver. I mean, the way I like to think about it is the reason we got into this is we want bookshops to be focused on what makes them so special and what makes them so amazing. And that is reading books, talking to customers, making recommendations. And that's what our platform focuses them on, not on like, standing in the post office waiting to ship a book to a customer, which many have done very, valiantly and importantly. But I think if our model can allow them to, not spend time doing that and spend more time doing the stuff they love, then we'll feel like that's success as well.
Mm. So when did you come on board actually with bookshop.org? Were you there from the start or did you get involved when they decided to open like a UK branch?
Yeah, to be honest, the company as a whole is quite young. So Andy Hunter founded the company and the website launched in January of 2020. So it's not been around that long. And I think under normal circumstances, most internet companies wouldn't launch like a second country within a year of starting at home. But given the success of the model in the US and given the constraints that the UK bookshops were facing, Andy felt it was important to try to bring the model to the UK sooner rather than later. So, candidly, I had left Etsy in February of 2020, and having spent 8 years at Etsy really championing a different type of small creative business, I actually reached out to Andy and said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Candidly, books are kind of more my thing than embroidered cushion covers, if I'm honest." um, and I've done exactly this for Etsy before, where I've helped an American internet company bring its business to the UK and to other markets. And at the time, the first time I talked to him, he said, this is a bit crazy. There's no way we're going to the UK anytime soon. And then over time, like I said, it became clear that there was an opportunity to really support the bookshops here. So I came on board in August of 2020. So I've been at it for a handful of months and wasn't there right from the beginning, but like I said, bookshop.org itself isn't that old.
Mm. You mentioned constraints there that the UK booksellers were hindered by perhaps. Like what constraints do you mean specifically?
Well, so I think there's probably two ways to answer that question. One is even before the pandemic, the bookshops were up against a world where consumers were buying more and more things online, and they were doing so through companies that are incredibly well funded and large and could afford to, candidly sell books at a loss in a lot of cases and get them to your door the next day. And that, I think, left a lot of bookshops really sort of intimidated by online sales and avoiding them pre-pandemic. And so when the pandemic arrived and lockdowns happened, whether shops are allowed to be open and footfall had just fallen, or sadly, as they've been required to be closed for so much time, it really forced a lot of bookshops to face the need to find a way to take some of the share of online sales as that consumer behavior really accelerated. Um, so yeah, I think there were constraints and challenges pre-pandemic, and then those have been really exacerbated, to say the least, by the lockdowns that have happened.
Mm. I do remember the first time I got to go into a bookshop after the first lockdown in, it must have been like May, end of May kind of time. The first time I went in, I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's beautiful." I didn't realize how much I missed just walking around looking looking at bits of paper on the wall.
Me too. It was like a quasi-religious experience being able to actually go and, yeah, see these physical objects. It was great.
Mm. Not that I didn't have enough at home, but yeah, books seem to be like that. It's one of the few things that I'm really bad at restraining myself. Like if you got enough food, you don't go to the store and buy like loads of extra unnecessary food. But with books, you seem to be like, no, I'll read it sometime. Like
Yeah, so true, so true.
yeah, you put it in like your literary freezer, like, right at the back of the shelf or something.
There's still more floor space in here. There's still more room for piles. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think it's so important in this sphere specifically to try and challenge Amazon and their pretty large monopoly of online book sales?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the arguments for why Amazon is not great for the world are very well rehearsed. What I would say is, even if you thought they were great corporate citizens and you thought they were doing everything really well, um, the share of the market that they occupy in the US and the UK is so high that it can't possibly be good for the industry. So, you know, when you talk to publishers and authors, you get this sense that you're either in the top 100 on Amazon, or you just, you're not. There's a big cliff between being a bestseller and not. And so our belief is that it's really important to have humans involved in this and physical spaces involved in this part of this industry in publishing and in bookselling, because people need a place to go physically and see a book and interact with humans and get recommendations that have been done by somebody who's actually read the books.
Hmm.
um, and that gives people a way into books that algorithms really struggle to. Amazon is an incredibly sophisticated company, and they still don't, I think we could all agree, give good recommendations about books. There's just a limitation to what machines can do. And so, we both want to make sure that financially bookshops are secure so that they can be the physical spaces that we all love in our communities. But we also want to make sure that we build a platform that puts humans front and center. So, this is the very tip of the iceberg of what we hope to do over time. But the fact that we put lists that humans have pulled together front and center on our website, I think, is one mark of this. Like, I know that, so many people tell us that they come to the site to buy one book and they end up buying many more, because these lists just generate an interest in such a wide variety of titles that an algorithm is not able to do.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like books are one of those weird things that you like. I guess that's a good sign if your website is like convincing people to almost act like they were in a bookstore, because that happens to me. You go in for one, and you're like, yeah, it's like a pint. You just go for one. You're like, no, I'm just gonna get this book quickly and get out before anything, anything else happens. And
Yeah,
then like suddenly you're walking around with like this big stack, and you're like, oh no, that
yeah,
looks really good as well.
yeah,
So the fact that the website is doing that too that's got to be a good sign, right? But
yeah.
um, like you talk about actually on the website about like why we need bookstores for a healthy like culture or society. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of really important aspects to it. One is, there aren't that many third spaces left today, like a physical space to go wander around and spend time thinking, putting your phone down and actually thinking about things and interacting with people. there just aren't that many of those spaces left. And doing it around books is so important. It's where authors connect with their writers quite often. It's where children fall in love with reading that can last a lifetime. It's where you get introductions to books or authors or titles that you would never have otherwise discovered. And that there's something about a physical space that really is conducive to all of those things. Um, and the other thing is that there's been a lot of focus over the last year about diversity in publishing, and I mean this in the broadest sense, both in terms of the voices, but also just the array of titles that are available. Like I was saying earlier, Amazon is really, it's a hits business. You either are in the top 100 or you're not. And we really feel like it's important to make sure that a very wide array of authors and titles are discovered and read by people. So we did um, a list with Elena Ferrante in the fall that was very well received. And on her list of 40 titles to read by women were quite a few books that, our wholesaler would tell us they've only sold one or two in the last year. And then we ended up selling tens of those in a week.
Mm,
And so we feel, a huge amount of gratification in knowing that we can help make a difference to these titles that are sometimes otherwise unsung.
mm. Yeah, I mean that's the probably the biggest advantage of the internet. But the lists thing, that's interesting that you chose to go with things like put together by physical people and not just an algorithm, because like a lot of companies like really have spoken very highly of how good their recommendation algorithm is. I mean, Spotify have been very sort of self-congratulatory at times about how good their algorithm is for recommending stuff. Now, personally, I find their Discover Weekly to generally be trash. I can't get around my head around how they can have so much information about the music I listen to and still pick such rubbish.
Yeah.
But why was there a conscious decision to choose people and not algorithms? Because surely you could save money on getting people on, or like just writing an algorithm and letting it go rather than having to employ people to be creative and think of the list themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, to state the really, I think what's sort of um, confusing about books in a world of technology is it feels like books are text and technology is good at text, right? So if you can describe something in words, a search engine can usually help you find it. A couple of lives ago, I worked on a startup that was in the interior design space, and that's really hard. Like you look at a chair that you like at a restaurant, let's say, and putting that into words is really difficult. So I think a lot of people think, oh, books should be easy with technology. But the fact of the matter is that when you read a book, A, the algorithms are not reading the whole book, even though that is text. They're just not reading the whole book. And B, the algorithms are not tapping into what is being provoked in you in terms of emotions and mood. And that can't be replicated easily with a machine. So I think, I've spent a lot of time, my career has been in consumer internet technology. And it's just incredibly hard for algorithms to solve for taste and for mood. I think those are the two things that make it really difficult. If you're looking for, a piece of consumer electronics, certainly the criteria can be like boiled down to a table full of facts, and that the internet is and technology is great at that. But I have a certain taste, I'm in a certain mood for something, I've just seen a certain TV show. You can a bookshop is a magical place where you can walk in and say, I just watched the Queen's Gambit, I sort of feel like watching reading something that's a bit like that. I really love this other author. I've just finished all of the Ann Tylers, what can I read next? um, a human who is truly expert in books is uniquely able to do that. And so our job as a platform is to try to find ways to use technology to make that scale as scalable as you could, but not to take it out of the equation.
Hmm. I guess you could compare it in a way actually to the difference between a DJ and like an algorithmically generated playlist. Like it might be good, it might all work together, but a DJ is going to be far more skilled at picking the like
Reading the room.
yeah, and like what vibe is coming from the songs, and like maybe picking up on categories or genres that are like mixed in with the way something sounds that like an algorithm can't pick up on. I remember reading this great this great article on like a computer program. They were trying to get it to understand nostalgia. Like,
Right.
um,
Good luck.
so they had to like take all the words that they used for like any word that could be used like in a nostalgic way. They got someone to like write a story from their childhood, and it like picked out certain words that they had like identified as being nostalgic, and then depending on like just how nostalgic your story ended up being, it would generate this pink piece of like rose tinted like art that like drew something based on the words that you used in your story. And I remember thinking, it's like, you know, I'd never really considered how difficult it must be to class certain words, like you or feelings or like styles of writing. Is like you said, like it's got to be almost impossible to get something that isn't like that can't like actually feel emotion yet. um,
Yeah.
that can like really truly understand like the way a the way a book makes you feel, or the type of writing that you enjoy, or I'm not even sure if they can code for sarcasm, like just at the very basic level.
Yeah, and part of me, again, I have huge respect for technology. I've spent my career in it, but part of me also asks, like, why? Why do we is our default to try to use technology to take humans out of the equation, where we could be using technology to lift up what humans are really great at, right, and make it more scalable and more available to other people. I think it's almost a matter of the lens that you look at it through. Like, I think we should be using technology in loads of ways, but perhaps the best way is to help these booksellers, bookseller who today only sees the footfall that comes to their store in their small town in England. What technology should be doing is giving them a bigger voice to sell more and a better variety and better connections to books.
Hmm.
And just also just understanding the, like, there's so many different ways into books, I think, is also the hard part about using technology alone to do this. So one list that our US site had that I thought was really incredible at the beginning of 2020 was a list of novels that featured key workers as the protagonists.
Okay.
And so, yes, you could probably set a task to an algorithm to go find those books, but a human would have had to give the algorithm the brief for that to even be interesting.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, I think that so often the technology debate is like, is it good or is it bad? And I guess my philosophy is, let's figure out how to use it. I don't think we have to not use it, and I don't think we have to use it in every possible way, but we're the stewards of it, and we can use it to empower people rather than take them out.
Hmm. So why do you think physical books have survived? Because I remember like maybe 10, but some point between like 10 and 15 years ago, like Kindles started to appear on the scene. And I started to get like a little concerned because, especially when I was a kid, I still do it now, but all my summer holidays are just lying in the sun reading, or lying in the shade reading if it's too hot. But I started to like, I tried a Kindle and one of those e-readers. I just hated it. I actually physically hated it. I was so just not happy with like trying to read off this screen. And I started to get real concerned that like books were going to start and disappear in the same way that like CDs have
Yeah,
disappeared,
yeah.
or in the same way like newspapers were disappearing then have just almost completely disappeared, or magazines or anything like that. Why do you think why do you think books have actually managed to like hold on in a way that those other sort of types of, I don't know what you would call them, creative things have disappeared into the digital world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure if I know why there's such a big difference between books and music, for example, because some of the things I'm about to say about books probably could apply to music as well. But I think, make no mistake, ebooks are, play a role. There are lots of people who appreciate being able to get bigger size font, for example, or have access to books that aren't readily published in print. Um, so there's definitely some good things about it, but I think in a way the foray into ebooks was kind of from my, as an outsider, as I said, not being from publishing, felt like an enormous distraction. I think people thought for a while that that was the technology investment that everybody needed to be making in the publishing world. Um, and yeah, it has really leveled off and turned out not to be as big a threat or as big an opportunity as people thought. And I think some of that is because like the books are really lovely to hold. The form factor actually really matters. They're also like great, as we've seen in this age of Zoom, they're actually like art in their own way on a shelf.
Mm,
They actually make up a considerable amount of the interiors of people's homes. And I think there's, in a funny way, like as you say, it's hard to control yourself if you love books from buying more, and some of that is because I think there's less guilt associated with that as an object to buy and to hold than so many other things in life today.
mm,
Rightly so. um so I think all of those reasons mean that you want to hold it, you want to show it on your shelf, you feel good about yourself for spending money on it. All those things make it an object that has held on despite other forces.
mm. That's an interesting thing, that the guilt isn't there.
I mean, I maybe that's my focus group of one, but I certainly feel that way myself. It feels
Mm,
like it almost doesn't count in a way when you spend money on a book for so many reasons, because it's good for you, it's good for the publisher and author, hopefully it's good for the bookshop that you bought it from. It's making a world that you want to see.
I had not thought of it like that. That's not good. I should not consider myself to not feel guilty when I constantly break my rule of no more books till you finish the pile you've got.
Right.
Um, uh, but yeah, I don't feel guilty actually when I buy a book. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty, but that's only because I'm breaking my constantly self-imposed rule that I'm not allowed to
Right.
buy any more books.
Right.
Um, but so do you think like books right now are more important than they have been maybe in the past like 30, 40 years? I feel like the thing with like newspapers and the kind of barriers to entry in media or opinion or anything like that has has kind of it's both fantastic in that we don't have the same gatekeepers of information that we used to, but on a totally flip side, that it's also not good because anyone with an internet connection can pose as a professional expert on basically anything. Um, and I think books almost provide you with like it's like look, if someone has managed to get this published, like a physical copy even more so, and someone has taken the time to like write and research this, there's like I like take it with more clout than I would reading something online or in a newspaper these days. Like, do you think books have become or will become like a more important way of like exploring ideas, given that most of the media seems to be more obsessed with like little 30-second bites, and a book is quite an expansive piece of work?
Yeah, and I think books are that's such an interesting question, and there's a lot in there. I think the other thing about books is that like so much of it is fiction, and that's a real plays a really important role in our lives. That you certainly can read fiction online, make no mistake, but as you say, like a lot of it is oriented towards clickbaity, news oriented items. And a world where you spend more time in fiction, I think, is a world that is good for everyone's mental health and for their empathy and for exploring ideas in a way that isn't so literal and reactionary to what's going on in the world right this moment. I think it provides a really valuable perspective. And to state maybe the most obvious thing about books right this minute, maybe not the last 30 or 40 years, but over the last year, is it is you know an easily accessible, anybody who is stuck at home, as many as of us are, can enjoy it. It's just a very for many people, affordable and accessible form of entertainment, in a world where we're not allowed to interact with each other face to face so much. So I think it's playing a really important role in the very immediate term. But I think fiction is so important to children, to adults, in terms of exploring ideas and really reinforcing empathy.
Mm. That's actually something I read. Where was it? Mm, it was in. Oh, that's going to drive me insane. Oh, it was in The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitan. I think you pronounce it. and he was talking about how the current generation is less empathetic because they read less literary fiction.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure if it even needs to be literary, but to take yourself out of your own world, sometimes this is done through reading history as well, that, takes you out of the current context. But being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and consider a different set of circumstances, I think is so important for all of us, whatever age you are. And, really great fiction does that in a wonderful way. Yeah, I just think it is so important, especially you can get really either focused on the news or really focused on yourself in today's world. And books are a really great way to take you out of that.
I could not agree more. It's a great way to try to drag yourself out of the endless seeming waking nightmare that we currently inhabit. Um, so what are you reading right now?
I am reading The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr.
Okay. Would you recommend it?
I would very much. It's really, really beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's it about?
It is about slavery in Mississippi, and it's about how to do it justice, the role that religion plays, about the presence of homosexual love even at that point in history and how it was treated. It is really, really beautiful. A lot of people have said this, but it is very reminiscent of Toni Morrison, which is quite a thing to say, but it is, to me, it feels very reminiscent of her work.
Okay. Is it fiction? Non-fiction?
Yes,
Fiction?
fiction.
Okay.
Yeah,
But set
yeah,
in that time. Okay. That sounds
yes.
interesting. I'll have to check that out. So,
Yeah.
what have bookshop.org got planned for expansion, improvements, updates? What's on the cards?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're about 2.5 months into this, so we've got a lot ahead of us, I would say. Um, we're working hard to make sure that we make it easier and better for buyers to buy books from us. We think little things like we think we could make our checkout process better, and we think we could make our SEO better. These kind of fundamentals. Um, we really want to work to bring more revenue streams to the bookshops, so we will start to take. Uh, we're looking at expanding into audiobooks, for example. We're looking at expanding into taking promotional dollars from publishers and helping bookshops get a cut of that. Um, and we are looking at today, you have to have, we're very UK centric. So we're looking at, can we Brexit deal now evident,
Hmm.
but can we expand that and try to get English language books into the hands of folks overseas? We had an enormous, sort of surprising amount of interest, I'd say, in English language books from the continent when we launched. Loads of people wanted to buy books that way, so we're hoping to be able to provide that. Uh, and hopefully very soon we'll start to take national book tokens. So there are little things like that along the way, all in the name of trying to help independent bookshops be more financially secure.
Okay, that's cool. So your site, when you go on to order something, does that mean you have to like pick the bookshop that you're ordering through, or does it, or do you offer like just that you can order through bookshop.org as a general company?
You can order through us without picking a bookshop, and in that case, 10% of the cover price goes into a profit pool for the all of the participating bookshops. But it's always best if you do nominate a bookshop, and the way you do that is through the map on our website. So you can go to the map, find a bookshop near you, or a bookshop you admire, or just a bookshop that you think deserves a little love today. And when you designate them, they will get 30% of the cover price of what you buy.
Okay, that's really cool. Like, yeah, it's so great to see like people finding like smart and innovative ways to like beat back against the kind of big tech monopoly, especially at things like Amazon. Because I think you mentioned it, like these huge companies like have the ability to sell stuff at a loss. It's like Uber is constantly making losses, but they manage to keep going through in like new investing rounds and expansion. So like because they're so huge, they can afford to sell stuff to like, yeah, take a loss on whatever they're paying their drivers or on loads of stuff. And I love to see people like finding not only like innovative ways but ways that are like genuinely financially viable to to fight back against the big monopolies that we've got. Like, do you see 2020 or like this current period we're in as like a turning point of like the fight back? Like, because I think everyone's been kind of woken up to the dangers of the amount of power that some of these Silicon Valley firms actually have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has realized that where they spend their money matters. That if you just sort of casually spend money where it feels most convenient to you, you may wake up in a world that is not the one that you wish to live in. And I think there was, a trend towards that before the pandemic, but that has it really accelerated people's understanding of the impact on the high street in particular. So yeah, and we're not the only ones doing interesting stuff in this area. And it's like I said, it's really comes down to, I think people quite often want to think, either tech is good or tech is bad. And the point is, I think, organizations like us, we want to be thoughtful about how we use technology to really genuinely help these small businesses. And I spent 8 years at Etsy before this doing something similar for the designer makers to really help them find a platform online without diminishing what was unique about them, and without, in many ways at Etsy as well, our focus was trying to help the people who went into those small creative businesses to spend time doing the part that they love, and let us do the slightly, like, candidly boring, less sexy part of it, which is to make sure that, like, somebody can give you a credit card and pay you for the thing and get an email with all the information. That part is not, it becomes easier and easier over time, but it's not what they got it. Booksellers or designer makers did not get into their businesses to spend time on that.
Hmm. Yeah, for anyone listening, actually, like Etsy is, I don't know, maybe you would define it differently, but like it's just like an online portal for people, like independent people, to sell like arts and crafts stuff, clothes, beanies,
Yeah,
anything
anything
you
that
can think of that people can make on their living room table, basically.
that's right. That's a great description of it. Yeah.
So like what experience did you, if you found like any of the experiences have like mapped over in a way that you didn't expect from like what you learned doing at Etsy to what you're doing now?
I mean, nothing has been really that surprising to me. I think that why Bookshop really spoke to me so clearly is because there were so many parallels in my mind of these. I think people who start their own business because they want to do what they love, not because they think that they're going to make a quick buck or because they're trying to, like, make loads of money, but because they want to spend their life doing something that they really enjoy, are, like, I think, are heroes and really provide not only a great example but a great service to customers. And the designer makers on Etsy and the booksellers on bookshop.org feel very similar to me in that regard. And I think it's on us to try to help them do that as best they can.
Hmm. Well, I could not agree more. So is there anything you would like to plug or push before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think I would just encourage folks to consider that, like, where you spend your money does matter. And as you talked about earlier, there's nothing that replaces going into a physical bookshop. So please do that when you can, and talk to them on their social media and on the phone while you can't. Booksellers are amazing. And if you can't do that, then coming to bookshop.org is a good way to support them as well.
Hmm. Have you considered like a VR walkthrough of the stores? That would be amazing. Obviously, that's like obviously that's a little bit like dystopian if we get to the point where we actually have to just go in with VR to the bookshops. But like, do you think that's possible? Could you like do a walkthrough with a VR headset on?
You never know. You never know. Like I said, I think the list thing is just the very beginning of what we hope we'll be able to do, to try to, marry technology with that amazing experience. So I'm sure, just even 2 years from now, we'll be talking about things that we didn't even imagine today.
Hmm. Maybe in the future we'll all just have one blank book, and like we'll have to wear a headset, and it'll just project the words onto the page.
Yeah. Will it smell the same if that's the case? Maybe not.
Yeah, you'd need something to like be able to smell the dust and the old book smell.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nicole, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.